Hi everyone, and welcome to your Week 11 lap guide for the Advanced Mazda series. My name is Adam, and this week is at Sonoma NASCAR Short, so let's start by having a look at my hot lap. So coming across the line to start the lap, we want to make sure we're staying to the right, and then approaching turn 1, this is relatively easy flat, but you want to hit the apex nonetheless, and then go back to sort of the middle of the track or just to the right as we approach turn 2. For turn 2, it's quite important that we keep a straight entry here, so that we can brake all in a straight line, entering turn 3, where we need to get quite a lot of speed scrub buff. Shifting down to second, and then making sure we stay quite tight, so we're going essentially as tight as we can without hitting this curb, since it is quite high. Early on the throttle, but making sure we don't put wheels in the gravel here. And then going back to the right as we approach turn 3 and 4. Entering turn 3, we want to make sure we actually stay quite far to the right and turn in quite late, since we once again want to start braking quite early and quite in a straight line as we enter turn 4, but this line can be quite hard to see on the track, so I want to take another look at it in Delta. So here we are in Delta looking at this second chicane, and this is my inputs for the second chicane, and as you can see I'm lifting off the throttle here, and this is as we're sort of starting to turn in for the first left, and here we are still turning in quite late, so we're actually quite far into the corner already, and just lifting off the throttle a bit before we start getting on the brake, so there is a bit of overlap where I'm not really braking or on the throttle. Braking relatively light as we approach this first curb, and then we peak our brake pressure sort of between the corners. So we would be on the curb around about here, and then peaking our brake pressure between the corners, and then releasing as we once again approach the second part, and then going back on the throttle just a slight bit as we are going over the second curb, and then back to full throttle as we exit the corner. So let's go back to the track and have a look at how this looks on the actual track. We can see also here that just like we saw in Delta, I'm staying sort of to the middle of the track here, entering turn 4, and then just sort of trail braking in the middle of the corner, and then downshifting to second, using this curb here on the inside, and then early on the throttle, and using lots of track here on the exit. So I'm even putting 2 wheels in the gravel here, which is not always ideal, but it can actually be quicker in some cases around this track. But ideally you want to keep 2 wheels on the curb here in a race situation. Staying to the left as we approach turn 5, and our braking point here is just before this line, or this switch in the tarmac. Braking relatively hard, and then down to second. This inside curb is actually really high, so we want to miss that if we can. But we can get on the power quite early, even before this curb. And then there is not really any track limit here on the outside, so we can use lots of track here. We can go beyond this curb quite far, and as long as we're back to the track before we hit this wall, we're gonna be fine. So I'm using lots of track here. You can see I'm basically 2 car widths from the track. and then going as tight as we can without hitting this wall. You can see I was really close to it on this lap. Entering turn 6, we have actually quite a lot of opportunity to use track limits here, and our braking point is just after this hole in the wall here. So braking around here, using lots of track as we enter the corner, and going in quite tight, using first gear and early on the throttle, since the corner sort of opens up on exit. The amount of track we want to use on exit is around about this. We don't want to be out here, because then that's going to mess up our exit here. But we want to go basically as far out as we can without getting a bad exit here. We want to get a nice and straight exit as we enter this sort of straight section here. This section should be easily flat. This corner is also easily flat. This one can be quite difficult. Basically, it's quite close to being flat in some cases, but most of the time you're going to have to do a slight lift, especially in draft. But what you wanna think about throughout this corner is to stay to the left as much as we can, just to open up our entry to this right-hander. And then we should get away with going, in this case I could do it fully flat on a hot lap, but in a race you're gonna have to do a slight lift. And just so we touch this curb and even maybe a slight bit of gravel, since this next left is quite easy, we can use lots of track here on the exit. And the important thing is to carry the speed through this right-hander and out onto the rest of this sort of straight S section. And that's going to give us lots of speed going into this next right-hander, which can also be a bit difficult. What you want to do is brake just a slight bit, or that's what I prefer to do. You can get away with just doing just sort of a big lift throughout this corner, but the way I prefer to do it is to do a slight bit of brakes. That's both going to slow down your speed more effectively, and it's also going to get the car turned in, since you're going to put weight on the front tires, and that's going to give you some rotation through the corner. So that's what I prefer to do, but if you prefer to just lift, that's also fine. And then getting back on the throttle as we hit the apex, and using basically as much of the track as we can, using the curb here, but not the gravel. And then for the final hairpin, our braking point is just before this first cone, so around the car length before this first cone is where we start braking. Relatively hard, since it's quite a hard braking zone and quite a going from quite a hard speed and going in a straight line. Trail braking and going down to first gear, and you can actually go quite tight here, since this curb is very flat and it's quite lenient on track limits, so you can use it if you like, but I like to just sort of round off the corner a bit more, so that I'm getting a slightly more open radius. Early on the throttle in first gear, and that's going to give us a good exit, making sure we stay off this wall here. And that's going to be a lap finished of Sonoma. That's it. Hopefully this can help you throughout your races. If you want to use my setup, you can find that on Coach Dave Delta. Any help you might need, you can find on the Coach Dave Discord. And if you're looking for more hot laps or more lap guides, you can find those on the Coach Dave YouTube channel. See you next week for week 12.